Hi, this is my review of Pathfinder Unchained. Pathfinder Unchained contains a lot of interesting tweaks and ideas and optional rules that you can use to modify your Pathfinder game. So if there were aspects to the game that you thought that could be better, or that you could improve them, or you can eliminate those things that you weren't too happy about, and you can enhance those things that you love about the Pathfinder RPG. Well, let's talk about the physical quality of the book. The book is similar to the other Pathfinder books. It's generally sturdy. The binding could have been a bit better. The quality of the paper is excellent, and the illustrations are great. They express that high fantasy feel or flavor. The organization is pretty good as well. Now let's talk about the contents. First, you get a reworking of 4 of the character classes. Let's talk about the Barbarian first. The Barbarian feels a lot more effective in combat because, well, first of all, it's more user-friendly because you get a static +2 bonus on melee attack rolls, melee damage rolls, thrown weapon damage rolls, and will saving throws. Instead of getting a modifier to your strength and constitution, it can become a bit of a hassle to keep track of the different changes. And the rage powers have been completely reworked. A lot of them just feel useful because with the core rules you got some rage powers that felt a bit weak or lukewarm, but here you get all the rage powers are more effective. Before you had like certain abilities, powers, or maneuvers that you can only perform once per rage, but here it is not so. It is during the entire the state of your rage power. And you also get some stances that are pretty useful, add more flexibility to the Barbarian. So for example, you want more hit points but you don't want the armor class penalty, you should take the calm stance, and that's very useful for example when an enemy is dealing a lot of damage and you just want to mitigate some of that. Or maybe you're fighting an enemy that has a really high armor class, then you should use the accurate stance. You will be able to hit that enemy a lot more times than usual. And a lot of the rage powers are specific to those stances. You can't use them unless you're taking that stance. So the Barbarian feels a lot more powerful and useful on the front line. Let me show you an illustration of the Barbarian. And then you get the Monk. The Monk as well. The Monk feels like an entirely different class now. You have a higher hit dice, you have a D10 of hit dice, and all of your key powers have been rebalanced. I'm actually quite impressed with the flurry of blows. You don't get a penalty when you use flurry of blows, and this means that the Monk is going to be a lot more powerful dealing damage. And with all the key powers, remember that with the core class that you had some powers that you gained as you went up in level. Well, those powers were removed from that and they were added to the key powers list, and the class feels like more useful as a scouting or skirmisher type of class because of all the different key powers that come here. You can go in and deal some damage, probably kill a few enemies, and get out as soon as possible. For example, you could combine the Formless Mastery or Furious Defense powers, and you'll become pretty much superior to any other party member with those 2 powers combined, because you get a bonus to your armor class and to your attack rolls. So that's pretty amazing. For a moment you're going to be like feel like an avatar of destruction with those key powers. Now when it comes to the rogue, this class doesn't feel like they changed too much, but rather they added to a couple of significant things that make it more specialized in skills and more effective in combat. For example, you have the debilitating injury. With your backstabs, you're going to be able to apply some penalties to your enemy that could maybe, I don't know, hinder the speed of your enemy if you don't want that enemy to get away, or maybe just make that enemy more vulnerable to attacks. You can do all that with debilitating injury. You also get some finesse training, because everybody puts everything on dexterity when they create a rogue, and here you're very effective at fighting with finesse type weapons right from the start. And when it comes to skills, I will talk a bit more about that in a few minutes, but suffice to say that the rogue becomes a true master of skills, and no other character class can surpass this rogue class. Now let's talk about the summoner. Well, before that, let me show you an illustration. A few of the illustrations. The illustration of the monk, and then we have the rogue. Now the summoner, the most important change is the Eidolon. You also have a new list of spells, but the Eidolon feels a lot more focused, more thematic as well. Before the summoner class, as presented in the advanced player's guide, that class felt a bit too all over the place. It was pretty cool, but you didn't have like a special theme or something that could serve as to bring some coherence to the different Eidolon evolutions. But here you have sort of like templates, which are Eidolon subtypes. So your Eidolon could be an angel or a demon, or maybe an Asata or an elemental or an inevitable. And depending on the subtype that you choose, your Eidolon is going to get different powers and abilities and different configurations for that particular Eidolon's evolutions. Here's an illustration of the summoner. And that makes the class a bit more focused. Now let's talk about some other features in this first chapter, which is the fractional base bonuses. Fractional base bonuses benefit those characters that decided to become a multi-class character, because before there were some multi-class combinations that weren't too useful. For example, the wizard rogue didn't have too much of an advancement when it came to the attack bonus, but here, because everything is advanced in a fractional way, you're going to be better at fighting, and with better saving throws, more balanced saving throws, because sometimes the saving throws were too unbalanced when you multi-classed. But here everything is fixed. And then you get staggered advancement, and this is basically getting small advancements as you gain experience points, as opposed to just hitting level 2 and getting all of your powers, abilities, and hit dice, etc. Here you gain stuff little by little. Now let's talk about this chapter, skills and options. I think this chapter is going to please a lot of the Pathfinder fans out there, and those who aren't too happy with the Pathfinder game as well, because a lot of the criticism when it comes to the way Pathfinder works is focused on the skills. Sometimes people think like there are just too many skills, or the skills could be handled better. But here you have some very interesting modifications. So for example, background skills. Sometimes you want your character to have a very interesting backstory, but you don't really want to spend those skill points in your background when you just want to something more useful for adventuring. But here you get a number of free skill points or skill ranks to flesh out your character. Maybe you want a paladin that was a sailor before, so even though you're maybe adventuring in a desert or in a forest, you get some points to spend on your profession as a sailor, and that's more thematic, more flavorful. And then you have consolidated skills. In consolidated skills, they basically reduce the number of skills that you have in Pathfinder from 35 to 12, so you don't have to spend too many ranks on different skills. This is going to be very beneficial to the smaller parties. For example, you have like a party of just three characters. That way you're going to take more advantage of the way you distribute skill ranks, because with parties of 6 or 7 characters, you're going to have a lot of a greater variety of skills. But when you're having just 3 characters or 4, sometimes you're missing a skill for a particular situation. And with this consolidated skills subsystem, you're going to have a skill for each occasion or situation. Now, grouped skills allow you to focus more on a specific, let's say, thematic field of skills. That is, you're going to be grouping skills focused on stealth, or maybe more like diplomacy type, and that way your character is going to have more flexibility at the lower levels, although you will only become more specialized at higher levels. And then you have craft and profession. This presents a new subsystem on how to craft, easier and more fun, in my opinion. And then you get skill unlocks, and this is one of the areas where the rogue can truly outshine the other character classes in terms of skills. And that is, you get sort of like mini feats within each skill. So the more skilled you are in a particular skill, you're going to get sort of mini abilities within that skill. So for example, let's say you have a lot of ranks on heal. If you have 10 ranks, when you treat deadly wounds, the target recovers hit points as if it had rested for a full day with long-term care. But if you have 20 ranks in heal, when you treat deadly wounds, the target recovers hit point and ability damage as if it had rested for 3 days with long-term care. And this is very useful if you don't want to have, for example, a cleric or a druid in your party. And then you have a variant of the multi-class feature. And with variant multi-classing, you basically take some features or powers of a specific class, and you take those instead of feats as you level up, and that's it. And that's very useful if you don't want all the things of a particular class, just a few key features. Now with the chapter 3, you get some very interesting modifications to alignment and combat. Let's start with alignment. There are ways in which you can eliminate alignment and get loyalties instead, and how to make alignment more significant. You have this. Well, let me show you this illustration. And you have this alignment trackers right here, and you start moving through those alignments of lawful, neutral, chaotic, good, neutral, and evil. And as you move across that track, you gain different sort of bonuses. You can also gain feats according to your alignment, and that's very useful for somebody who's I don't know, really role plays in the spirit of the character, taking moral choices according to that character and not according to what the player wants as an advantage in the game. Now let's talk about revised action economy. You get a new division of actions per round. You have 3 actions, and you may spend them accordingly to what different actions represent. So for example, maybe you want to take just 1 attack that costs 1 action, or maybe you want to perform a full attack that costs 3 actions, or maybe you want to attack and then move and then maybe attack again. And that could represent a bit of an advantage if you haven't taken the appropriate feats to do so. But with each subsequent attack, you get a penalty. So it's just a way in which you can handle actions in each round differently, each turn. Then you have replacing iterative attacks. I think this is a very cool feature. You basically just do 1 attack roll for all of your attacks, and depending on what you get, that means maybe you missed, maybe 1 of your attacks hit, or maybe all of your attacks hit, and that also covers critical hits as well. And that's very useful. It actually speeds up combat a bit. Then you get wound levels, and these allow you to have a grittier game, a deadlier game, because your character is going to get penalties as he gets wounded, but this also presents a sort of like an obstacle for those who like turnarounds, like coming back from the brink of death. This is going to be a lot harder, because as you get more and more damage, you're going to be less effective in a fight. And then you have rules for disease and poison to make them more lethal on the long term. And then let's talk about stamina and combat tricks. This is actually a very interesting feature, because if you make it a fighter exclusive thing, you're going to be able to perform greater feats with your existing feats. So for example, well, you have a stamina pool, and if you decide to use those points of the stamina pool with, for example, the Death or Glory feat from Ultimate Combat, when you make a Death or Glory attack, you can spend 5 stamina points to automatically negate the opponent's immediate action attack against you after it takes the action but before it rolls the attack. Or maybe you would like to use it with the Deathless Initiate. When you are at 0 or fewer hit points, you can spend 2 stamina points to avoid taking damage when you take both a move and a standard action or a full round action. And so as you can see, it's just ways in which you can perform feats better. Now let's talk about magic. Magic is it's a very interesting chapter, because you have some ways in which you can nerf spellcasters and some ways in which you can benefit them. You have simplified spellcasting, and this actually feels like it feels like they nerfed the caster a bit, because well, they look for basically created a subsystem that saves you the trouble of having to organize and choose your spells at each level, because you have to choose which spells you're going to use each day. But here you have like a pool of spell points of sorts that you can use to cast any spell that you have in your spell book. But this actually makes it that you have less spells to cast per day, so I didn't really like it that much. And then you have also some subsystems on how to make your spells weaker than, for example, maybe the spells don't scale with you, so a spell of a lower level is probably going to be abandoned because of that. And then you get esoteric material components, and this is pretty cool, because you can use all these weird components to enhance maybe the damage that it will cause, or the range, or the duration of your spell according to the different materials that you use. Here you have some of them. That's pretty cool. That gives a lot more of a material, like material components are more significant. And then you have automatic bonus progression, and this is for campaigns where you don't want magic items to determine the advance or the power of the advancement or the power of the player character, because as the player character levels up, that character is going to get bonuses, so you won't have to be looking all the time for that +3 sword or +4 armor. That will come as a natural feature of your character progression. And then you have scaling items, and that's basically items that grow with your character, kind of like the paladin with his magic sword. These different armor and weapons are going to get more abilities and become more powerful as your character levels up. And then you have dynamic magic item creation, and this presents a lot of new ways in which to create magic items that, for example, the entire party could participate in creating that item, or they feel like legendary weapons of sorts because of all the different things that you have to do. But you may also get some random results, positive and negative. There could be some beneficial effects to your weapon, or there could be some negative things, or some quirks, as you can see here with this sword that kind of modified the wielder to look like a sort of like a fairy character. And they present a lot of item examples. And the last part of the book, it's a chapter on how to create monsters in a faster way and with some interesting modifications. Because sometimes it becomes too long to create a monster. Maybe somebody's coming over to play and you have like 30 minutes and you won't be able to create some original monsters in time, but here you have a few steps that allow you to create monsters and to make them that they have different things or special things as compared to the normal type of that monster. So for example, maybe your characters have faced trolls before and they already know that troll regenerates, so they're going to be prepared with torches and acid. But here you can add new abilities to different monsters and make, for example, a Medusa, an orc, or maybe the Atarask with different powers and abilities that the characters weren't expecting. And the system is somewhat fast, not as fast as I would have liked, but it's certainly faster than the standard method. Well, let's talk about what I think of this book. I think this is a must-have because it presents so many cool things to modify your game with. A lot of people weren't happy with the way, I don't know, the skill list felt a bit bloated sometimes. I don't mind it. I like crunchy games and games with a lot of features, but some people didn't like Pathfinder because of that. Well, here you reduce the number of skills to just 12, and you have many ways in which to modify and speed up combat. And the new character classes, they actually feel better than the core versions. So this is a must-have in my opinion. It feels as good as the Advanced Player's Guide or the Advanced Race Guide, and I definitely recommend it. And for those of you that kind of like Pathfinder, you should try the rules presented in this book, and you will probably come to love Pathfinder after applying some of the subsystems here. Well, thanks for watching my review. If you have any comments or questions, please let me know. See you later.